Hello, it's Pastor Jim from First Congregational Church. Thank you for watching. I'm recording this at home on April 14th. Just to let you know that we're thinking about you. Pastor Julia and I are praying for you. We're concerned for those that are struggling with financial challenges. And we invite you to call us and talk if you are wanting someone to talk to, or if you're feeling burdened by either distress, emotional distress, or discomfort of any kind, or financial worries. We have a benevolence fund to help those in need, and we would be honored to be able to talk to you and perhaps help you. We watched a video this morning at church. It was a webinar about pastoral care and how do we care for each other in the church during this time of social distancing and isolation. And Mark Tidsworth of Pinnacle Leadership, who hosted this webinar, was speaking from his years of experience in another career as a therapist. And he said that there's a list of common initial reactions to large-scale life disruptions or trauma. And some of the things on his list were confusion, fatigue, anxiety and or depression, overall distress, intensified emotional reactions and experiences. So maybe we have the same reactions that we would normally have, but they're intensified, they're heightened because of the extenuating circumstances. And he also mentioned on his list doubting of sanity. We doubt our sanity sometimes. And whether we live alone or with others, I suspect we struggle with just wondering, am I losing my mind? Is this just a bad dream? We also may be finding ourselves having very interesting dreams lately, and that's been documented in essays you might have read about how this time of crisis and isolation is causing us all to have interesting dreams. Another one that he mentioned on his list of initial reactions to large-scale life disruption and or trauma is what he calls faith crises. Not so much right now necessarily, but as things settle down, as we resume some degree of normalcy and we come back together and try to rebuild a life that has been on hold and been seriously disrupted, we might find ourselves having times of faith crisis. I was reading this morning the story of John, in John's Gospel, of Jesus appearing to the disciples in the upper room as one of the resurrection appearances. It's where we have the story of doubting Thomas. And talk about a time of disruption and trauma for those folks, our ancestors in the faith, those first disciples. Jesus comes to them through a wall, through a locked door, into their hearts and minds and says, "Peace, I bring you peace, do not fear." And for whatever reason, Thomas wasn't there at the time. He was out getting groceries maybe, or running an errand of some kind. Maybe he went out for a cigarette. But Thomas was not there. And when he came back, everyone was elated and joyful and bursting to tell him about their visit from Jesus. And of course, Thomas was very skeptical. He said, "I don't believe it. I haven't seen it. Unless I can see him and touch the holes in his hands or the hole in his side, I will not believe." So in this story in John's Gospel, Jesus appears a second time and again comes through the locked walls, the locked door, and appears, and Thomas is with them this time. And he invites Thomas to come over and touch his wounds and experience him intimately. And Thomas can only hold this experience in awe. And he says, "My Lord and my God." And there's a punchline at the end of the story. John, the writer, puts on the lips of Jesus that I think is meant for all of us. He has Jesus say these words, "Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have come to believe." That's all of us, isn't it? We have not seen Jesus raised from the dead. We have stories. We have the testimony that's been passed down through the generations. We have the stories in the Scripture. We have the great hymns of the faith. And we have the love of family and friends and neighbors and church. to sustain us. But we have good reason to be skeptical. We have reason to doubt our sanity sometimes, whether we feel like we've experienced God firsthand or not. So I invite us in these days, in this season of Easter, to be gentle with ourselves, to be forgiving of one another, and to be okay with the feeling of being unsettled. This is all normal reaction to stressful times. I like what Jim Wallace from the Sojourners community once said. He said, faith is believing in spite of the evidence and watching the evidence change. So maybe that's our challenge to us, is to try to believe even though we don't have all the evidence that we might like to have. We believe in things we don't see. We believe in science. We believe in viruses, even though we can't see them, because we trust the scientists and the history of exploration. And similarly, we have a lot of witness and testimony that serves as a foundation for our faith. And when we don't feel like we can believe, then those around us could perhaps do the believing for us. But please don't be afraid. Please have faith. And if you can't have faith, just trust that God is with you and that you will find opportunity to return to normal again. I look forward to seeing you on Sunday. We have a virtual coffee hour afterwards also on Zoom, and a link is being sent out to all the members and friends whose email we have. If you'd like to get on that Zoom link for coffee hour, please drop us a note if you don't receive a reminder. Take care.